Billionaire caught his fiancée doing the unthinkable to the maid. What was hidden in the pillow left him furious. She smiled while she destroyed an innocent woman's life. She never expected the pillow would destroy her own. Nathan Cole was not a man who trusted easily. At 45, he had built one of the largest real estate empires on the East Coast, and every dollar of it had taught him the same lesson. People want something from you. Always. But there were two people in his life he trusted completely. The first was his father, Arthur, 78 years old, a proud man who had built the first version of the family business decades ago with nothing but a truck and a dream. Arthur lived with Nathan now, in the west wing of the enormous estate, because his heart was weak and his memory came and went like weather. The second was Maria Torres. Maria was 30 years old, and she had worked in the Cole household for 6 years. She had started as a part-time housekeeper and had slowly become something the family could not imagine living without. She was the one who remembered Arthur's medication schedule better than the nurses did. She was the one who sat with him in the evenings when he got confused and scared, holding his hand and telling him stories until he calmed down. She never asked for more money. She never asked for anything, really, except one day off a month to visit her own mother in Queens. Nathan trusted Maria with his father's life. Literally. Which is why, when he introduced Victoria Sinclair as his fiancée 8 months ago, Maria had felt something cold settle in her stomach that she couldn't explain. Victoria was 34, beautiful in the effortless way that made people stop talking mid-sentence when she walked into a room. She laughed easily, complimented everyone, and brought Arthur flowers every single week. Nathan adored her. His friends adored her. The society pages adored her. Maria did not trust her. But Maria had learned a long time ago that a maid's suspicions mean nothing against a rich man's love. So she kept quiet. She kept working. She kept watching. It started with small things. Victoria would disappear into the East Wing for an hour at a time, claiming she was resting. She would take calls on a second phone, one Nathan didn't know about, always stepping outside to answer it. And Arthur, sweet, strong Arthur, who used to walk the entire estate grounds every morning, had started getting weaker. Dizzy. Forgetting things even more than before. Some mornings he could barely lift his coffee cup. The doctors called it natural progression of his condition. Maria called it strange. One evening, she was carrying fresh linens down the hallway near Victoria's private sitting room when she heard something that made her stop cold. Victoria was on the phone, her voice low and sharp, nothing like the sweet, giggling tone she used around Nathan. "I told you, it just needs to look natural. Slow. Nobody's going to ask questions about an old man with a bad heart." Maria's hands went numb. The linen slipped slightly in her arms. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She listened for 3 more seconds before Victoria's heels clicked toward the door, and Maria bolted around the corner just in time, heart slamming against her ribs. That night, Maria lay awake in her small room above the garage, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Arthur's shaking hands. She thought about the way he'd started calling her sweetheart instead of her name, because he couldn't always remember it anymore. She thought about the fact that no one, not Nathan, not the doctors, not a single person in that huge glittering house, would believe a maid over a woman like Victoria Sinclair. But someone had to protect Arthur. Someone had to find the truth. Maria decided, right there in the dark, that it would have to be her. She had no idea, as she finally drifted off to sleep, that 4 days later she would find something in Victoria's private drawer that would change everything, and that keeping it safe would put her own life in more danger than she ever imagined. 4 days later, Maria was cleaning Victoria's private sitting room while Victoria was out at a spa appointment in the city. A 2-hour trip, guaranteed. Maria told herself she was just dusting. Just doing her job. But her eyes kept drifting to the antique writing desk in the corner, the one Victoria always kept locked. Except today, it wasn't locked. Maria's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She knew this was wrong. She knew if she was caught, she would lose her job, maybe worse. But she thought of Arthur's trembling hands, his confused eyes, The phone call she couldn't unhear. She opened the drawer. Inside, wrapped in a soft cloth, were small glass vials and a handful of syringes, unused, along with printed instructions in a language Maria didn't fully understand but recognized enough words from, a medication name that wasn't on any of Arthur's approved prescriptions. She had spent 6 years learning every pill, every dosage, every doctor's note for that man. This wasn't one of them. There was also a folded piece of paper. A handwritten note, unsigned. Increase dose slowly. By spring, everything will be yours. Patience. Maria's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped everything. She took a photo with her old flip phone, the only phone she owned, of the note and the vials. Her fingers fumbled, but she got the pictures. Then she made the biggest mistake of her life. She didn't put everything back exactly right. She didn't have time. She heard tires on the gravel driveway outside. Victoria was home 2 hours early. Panicking, Maria grabbed the small bundle of vials and syringes, shoved them into her apron pocket, and hurried out of the room, locking the door behind her with the spare key she wasn't supposed to have. She told herself she would show Nathan everything that evening. She told herself this was almost over. She was wrong. That night, she waited in the kitchen for Nathan to come home from his office in the city, the small bundle wrapped in a kitchen towel and hidden in her room upstairs. Her plan was simple: show him the photos, show him the vials, and let him decide what to do. But Nathan came home late, exhausted, and immediately went to check on his father, who'd had a bad episode that afternoon. Dizziness, confusion, a fall in the hallway that left a bruise on his forehead. Nathan's face was grey with worry. This was not the moment. Maria decided to wait one more day. She went up to her room, took the bundle of vials from her apron, and hid them in the one place she was sure no one would ever think to look, inside her own pillow, sewn carefully into the seam with a needle and thread she kept for mending uniforms. She told herself it would only be there for a few hours. Just until morning, when she could speak to Nathan calmly. She had no way of knowing that Victoria had noticed the drawer wasn't sitting quite right. She had no way of knowing that Victoria had gone into a quiet panic of her own, searching her room top to bottom, realizing her hidden supply was gone. And she had no way of knowing that Victoria's mind, cold and calculating, had already landed on exactly who to blame, and exactly how to make sure nobody would ever believe the maid over her. By the next morning, Victoria was smiling again. Sweet. Warm. Perfect. She had a plan. And it involved a bedroom, a pair of scissors, and an audience. Victoria Sinclair did not get to where she was in life by panicking. She'd grown up with nothing, a small apartment in Ohio, a mother who worked 2 jobs, a father who left before she turned 6. She had learned early that beauty opens doors that hard work alone never could. By 25, she'd learned something else, that patience and charm could open even bigger doors, the kind with marble floors and staff who called you. Nathan Cole had been her biggest door yet. And Arthur's slow decline meant an inheritance that would set her up for the rest of her life, long before she'd have to spend decades pretending to love a man 20 years her senior in age difference of understanding, if not literal years. But now her private stash was missing. And there was only one person who had access to that room, who cleaned it, who could have noticed the unlocked drawer. Victoria didn't confront Maria directly. That would be too obvious, too messy. Instead, she did something far smarter. She waited until Nathan was home for the weekend, relaxed, his guard down. And she made sure she needed to check something in the guest wing, specifically, the staff quarters, where she claimed she'd left an earring after a tour of the house months ago. She let herself into Maria's room while Maria was downstairs preparing lunch. She searched quickly, quietly, expertly, trained by years of hiding things from her own suspicious exes. And there it was, a pillow that felt slightly different from the others. Slightly firmer near one seam. She pressed it and felt the unmistakable shapes of small glass vials. Victoria's face broke into a slow, satisfied smile. She didn't remove anything. She left it exactly as it was. Because now she had a much better idea than simply retrieving her property. She would make sure Nathan saw it himself. That evening, at dinner, Victoria was unusually affectionate toward Arthur, refilling his water, asking about his day, laughing at his old stories. Nathan watched her with the same warm adoration he always did. He had no idea that every gesture was rehearsed, timed, purposeful. "You know," Victoria said gently, near the end of the meal, "I've been meaning to ask, has anyone changed the bedding in the staff quarters recently? I thought I smelled something odd earlier when I was looking for my earring." It was such a small, innocent comment. Nathan barely registered it. But it planted exactly the seed Victoria wanted. The next morning, she made her move. She waited until Nathan was in the house, not at the office, not on a call, and she discovered the smell again, louder this time, more concerned. She insisted something was wrong, that maybe there was mold, maybe something had died in the walls near Maria's room. She insisted Nathan come see for himself, worried it might be affecting Arthur's health given his weak lungs. Nathan, exhausted and worried about his father's declining condition, followed her upstairs without question. Maria was in the middle of stripping the bed for laundry when they walked in. She froze, confused, as Victoria marched straight to the pillow Maria hadn't yet washed and picked it up with a dramatic frown. "There's something inside this," Victoria said, voice laced with false concern. "Nathan, I really think you should see this." Maria's stomach dropped through the floor. She knew, in that instant, exactly what pillow Victoria was holding. "Wait," Maria started, but it was too late. Victoria was already reaching for the small scissors on the nearby dresser, the same pair Maria used for sewing, and Nathan was already stepping closer, his face shifting from confusion to alarm. Maria opened her mouth to explain everything, the phone call, the drawer, the note, but the words caught in her throat as Victoria pressed the scissors into the seam of the pillow and began to cut. The room went silent except for the sound of fabric tearing. Maria's heart hammered so hard she thought she might be sick. She watched, frozen, as Victoria's manicured fingers pulled the seam apart and the pillow's stuffing spilled onto the bed, along with dozens of small glass syringes, more than Maria remembered hiding, glinting under the morning light. Nathan's face went white. What is this?" His voice cracked. He looked at the syringes, then at Maria, his eyes wide with disbelief and something that looked horribly close to betrayal. "Nathan, Maria's voice shook. "Nathan, please, let me explain, this isn't what it looks like. How long has this been happening?" Victoria's voice rose, sharp with manufactured horror. She stepped back from the bed as if it disgusted her, one hand pressed to her chest. "Nathan, your father has been getting weaker for months. Dizzy, confused, falling. And this whole time she's had access to his medication, to his room, to everything." "That's not true." Maria's voice broke. Tears blurred her vision. "I found these in your own pillow, Maria." Victoria's voice was gentle now, almost pitying, which somehow made it worse. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm scared. For Arthur. For all of us." Nathan stood frozen, staring at the syringes scattered across the white sheets like something out of a nightmare. 6 years of trust, 6 years of watching this woman care for his father like her own family, and now this. "Maria." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Please. Tell me the truth." Maria opened her mouth. The truth was right there, the phone call, the note, the vial she'd found in Victoria's own locked drawer. But looking at Nathan's face, grey with shock and fear for his father, she realized with sinking horror that she had no proof left. The photos were still on her old flip phone, buried in her jacket pocket downstairs. The note was gone, still in Victoria's drawer, and Maria had no way to prove she hadn't put those things there herself. It was her word against a woman Nathan had loved and trusted for 8 months. A woman with soft hands and a soft voice and absolutely nothing to gain, as far as Nathan could see, from lying. "I didn't do anything to your father," Maria said, her voice trembling but steady. "I would never. You know me, Nathan. 6 years. You know me." But doubt had already crept into his eyes, and doubt is a fast-growing weed. I need you to pack your things, Nathan said quietly. His hands were shaking. I'm sorry, Maria. I have to protect my father. I have to figure out what's going on here, and I can't. I can't have you in this house while I do that. Nathan, please. Pack your things, he said again, firmer now, though his voice cracked on the last word. Victoria stood slightly behind him, her face arranged into perfect, gentle sorrow. But for just 1/2 second, as Nathan turned away, her eyes met Maria's, and Maria saw it. The flicker of triumph. The cold, satisfied gleam of someone who had just won. Maria was escorted from the house within the hour, her 6 years of devotion erased in the span of 10 minutes, carrying nothing but a small suitcase and a heart that felt shattered into 1,000 pieces. She stood on the long gravel driveway, looking back at the enormous house glowing gold in the afternoon light, and thought of Arthur. Sweet, confused Arthur, still inside, still in danger, with no one left who knew the truth to protect him. She had lost everything. But she still had her flip phone, 3 blurry photographs, and a fire in her chest that refused to go out. She wasn't finished. Not even close. Maria spent 3 days in a small motel outside town, running through every option in her exhausted mind. She had almost no savings. She had lost her home and her job in the same afternoon. And the only proof she had, 3 grainy photos on an old flip phone, showed vials and a handwritten note, but proved nothing about who had put them in her pillow. She thought about giving up more than once. She thought about going back to Queens, back to her mother, and simply trying to forget the entire Cole family ever existed. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Arthur's face. His confusion. His trembling hands. The way he used to squeeze her fingers during his bad nights and whisper, "Don't leave, sweetheart. Stay till I fall asleep." She couldn't leave him. Not like this. On the 4th day, Maria did something she hadn't done in years. She went to church. Not entirely out of faith, but out of desperation, sitting in the back pew of the small chapel near her motel, praying for some kind of sign, some kind of way forward. That's where she ran into Dorothy. Dorothy was 71 years old and had worked as Arthur Cole's private nurse for 3 years before retiring the previous spring due to her own health problems. She recognized Maria immediately from the times they'd worked together at the estate, caring for Arthur side by side. Over coffee, Maria told her everything. The phone call, the drawer, the note, the pillow, being thrown out of the house. Dorothy listened with growing alarm, her coffee going cold in front of her. "Maria," Dorothy finally said, "there's something you need to know. Before I retired, Arthur told me something. I thought it was just his confusion talking. But maybe it wasn't." Dorothy explained that Arthur, in one of his clearer moments, had confided that Victoria had been bringing him a special tea every evening, insisting it would help him sleep better, something her grandmother used to make. Arthur had trusted her completely and drank it every single night. Dorothy had noted it in her private care journal, though she'd never suspected anything sinister at the time. Maria's blood ran cold. "Do you still have that journal?" Dorothy did. That evening, Maria and Dorothy sat together going through months of handwritten notes, dates, times, small details about Arthur's symptoms that had gotten steadily worse exactly in the pattern of a slow poisoning. Dizziness. Memory loss. Weakness. All symptoms that could easily be blamed on old age and a weak heart, unless you knew what to look for. But a journal and a theory still weren't enough. Maria needed something undeniable. Something that would make Nathan listen. She needed Arthur himself. The next morning, with Dorothy's help and using the small kitchen entrance Maria still remembered from years of deliveries, Maria found a way to see Arthur alone for just a few minutes while Nathan was in a business meeting and Victoria was out. Arthur was sitting by his window, weaker than she remembered, but his eyes lit up the moment he saw her. "Sweetheart," he whispered, reaching for her hand. "Where did you go? I've been asking for you." Tears streamed down Maria's face as she gently asked him about the tea Victoria brought him every night. Arthur's brow furrowed in concentration, fighting through the fog in his mind, And then, slowly, painfully, he remembered. She said it was our secret, Arthur whispered. She said Nathan would worry if he knew I couldn't sleep without it. It wasn't a full confession. It wasn't ironclad proof. But combined with Dorothy's journal, the photos on Maria's phone, and Arthur's shaky but genuine memory, it was enough to build something real. Enough, Maria hoped desperately, to finally make Nathan see the truth before it was too late. Getting back into the house to speak with Nathan directly felt impossible. He wasn't answering calls from an unknown number, and Maria couldn't exactly walk up to the front gate after being escorted off the property days earlier. So she did something bold. She wrote everything down, every detail, every date, every piece of evidence, and mailed it, along with copies of her photos and Dorothy's journal entries, directly to Nathan's office downtown, marked urgent and personal. 3 agonizing days passed with no response. Then, on the 4th evening, there was a knock at Maria's motel room door. She opened it to find Nathan standing there, looking like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, his expensive suit wrinkled for the first time Maria had ever seen. "I need to see everything," he said quietly. "All of it. Please." For the next 2 hours, Maria walked him through everything, slowly, patiently, even as her voice shook with old hurt. Nathan listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening more with every detail: the phone call, the drawer, the note, Dorothy's journal, Arthur's fragile memory of the nightly tea. When she finished, Nathan sat in silence for a long moment, his head in his hands. "I already had my suspicions," he finally admitted quietly. "After you left, I installed a hidden camera in my father's room. I told myself it was just to make sure his nurses were treating him properly. I didn't want to believe it could be her." He pulled out his phone and showed Maria a short clip from 2 nights earlier, grainy but unmistakable, of Victoria pouring a small vial into Arthur's evening tea, checking over her shoulder before leaving the room. Maria's hands flew to her mouth. "I confronted her tonight, before I came here," Nathan said, his voice hollow. "She didn't even deny it. She just started talking about the house, the money, how much easier everything would be once he was gone. Like it was nothing. Like he wasn't even a person to her." Nathan's voice cracked completely then, years of composure crumbling all at once. "I threw you out of my house. I believed her over you. 6 years of you taking care of my father like your own family, and I threw you out over a lie." Maria reached out and took his hand, the same gentle way she used to comfort Arthur during his hardest nights. "You were scared for your father," she said softly. "That doesn't make you a bad man. It makes you human." Nathan looked at her with something like disbelief, that she could forgive him so easily after everything. "The police are on their way to arrest her right now. Arthur's already been moved to the hospital for observation. The doctors think, with time, he'll make a full recovery now that the poisoning stops." Relief crashed over Maria so powerfully her knees nearly buckled. "There's something else," Nathan added quietly. "I want you to come home. Not just as staff. I want to make this right, properly, however long it takes. My father asks for you every single day. And honestly." He paused, his voice softening even further. "So do I." Maria wiped her eyes, looking at this man who had trusted the wrong person and nearly lost everything that mattered because of it, now standing humbled in front of her. "I never left because I stopped caring," she whispered. "I just needed you to see the truth." "I see it now," Nathan said. "I see you now." 6 months later, the Cole estate looked different, not in its marble floors or golden chandeliers, but in something harder to see and far more important. Arthur Cole sat in the garden on a warm spring afternoon, color back in his cheeks, strength back in his hands, laughing at something on his tablet like the sharp, funny man he used to be before Victoria Sinclair ever walked through the front door. The doctors called his recovery remarkable. Arthur simply called it a miracle, and he never failed to remind everyone exactly who he credited for it. "That woman saved my life," he'd tell any visitor who would listen, nodding toward the kitchen. Never doubt a good woman's instincts. Never. Victoria Sinclair had been arrested and charged, her carefully built world of charm and lies collapsing in a single afternoon. The investigation revealed she had done something similar before, years earlier, with a previous elderly partner in another state, a case that had gone unsolved until now. Maria's courage had not only saved Arthur. It had finally brought justice for someone else, too. As for Nathan, the guilt of doubting Maria never fully left him, but he channeled it into something better: trust, patience, and a quiet devotion that grew slowly, honestly, over the following months. There was no rush, no dramatic declaration. Just small moments. Nathan learning to make Arthur's favorite tea himself so Maria could rest in the evenings. Nathan asking Maria's opinion on business decisions. Genuinely listening. Nathan sitting beside her in the garden some evenings, saying nothing at all, simply grateful she had stayed. Maria never asked for anything more than what she'd always wanted. For Arthur to be safe, for the truth to matter, for good, honest work to mean something in a world that too often rewarded people like Victoria instead. But sometimes, life gives you more than you asked for anyway. One evening, nearly a year after that terrible day with the pillow and the scissors, Nathan found Maria in the garden watching the sunset with Arthur asleep peacefully in his chair nearby. "I used to think trust was something you gave to people who'd earned it," Nathan said quietly, sitting beside her. "I know now it's something you have to earn back, too. Thank you for letting me." Maria smiled, the golden light catching the same warmth in her eyes that had never once wavered, even when everyone else doubted her. "Family isn't about never making mistakes," she said softly. "It's about who stays to fix them." Arthur, half awake, murmured without opening his eyes, "Amen to that," and both of them laughed quietly in the fading light. The house that had once nearly destroyed an innocent woman's life became, slowly and honestly, a real home. Built not on money or appearances, but on the kind of loyalty that money could never buy in the first place. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Do you think Nathan deserved Maria's forgiveness after everything? And what would you have done in Maria's place? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more emotional stories every week. See you in the next one.